Hey vinyl community, Jeff back again with another one of my A to Z's of Christian rock. Yeah, so I started this, of course, to go through my collection, and this is strictly looking at vinyl. My vinyl collection of Christian rock, metal, hard rock, not including pop, not including light rock for the most part, but the edgier stuff that I have on vinyl. And as we had a lot in the B's, we don't have as many in the C's. We have more than we had in the A's, but anyway, so yeah, I guess C is not a super common name starter for bands. I looked back to see how many in the CDs I had, and there were a handful of them, but they just have never made it to the vinyl realm. So anyway, let's get into this. I did pull one in that would be on the fence, but only because I believe they deserve it. So coming up first is Les Carlson. I mentioned this not too long ago in the B's, actually, because Les Carlson was the singer for Bloodgood, which they were listed in the B's, and I mentioned that he had a solo album, and this is it. This came out like last year, and so it's got some of the guys, Osfox and stuff, from the Bloodgood lineup that kind of helped out, but after Michael Bloodgood passed away, this was kind of like the next thing that Les did, was work with those guys and put out this. And it's along the same lines as Bloodgood, you know, maybe not quite as heavy, but it's definitely, you know, a heavier album in that same line. So Les Carlson is back with that. And this is the one that's kind of on the line. I mentioned this the other day in my Perfect 10 because they came up. But Chagall Guevara, they're more of a rock, hard rock. A little less on the edgier side, but kind of a super group, a bunch of guys from various Christian bands of the lighter side. They got together and put out something that wasn't overtly Christian. It was kind of just like, I don't know, like people say they would cross over or whatever. They had a song on a soundtrack, and you know they gained a little notoriety with this, but it didn't, you know, for those of us who, it's got Steve Taylor on a vocal. Steve Taylor is one of my favorite. He's very quirky and pop and tongue-in-cheek and satire in his songs, and but he's more of a pop artist. But on here, you know, it is a little bit more of an alternate rock feel. So this was reissued on vinyl about a year ago or 2 years ago now, I don't know, but it was on vinyl back in the day in the 90s when it came out. Hard to find. And they, as I mentioned in my Perfect 10 the other day, they did a Kickstarter to release a live album, an unreleased live album from back in the day, and they raised so much money that they ended up going ahead and tracking down the ability to, you know, get this first album reissued. Also on vinyl, this is a live album they did, double live album from back in the day they wanted to see reissued, and the fans spoke and took off, and they raised so much money for this. They ended up getting back together and recording a handful of new songs with the old lineup, but you know, in current day technology. And they even put on a concert and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it was a big deal a couple years ago, and so great stuff there. All right, this next one, you know, people are going to question it maybe, but Circle of Dust, when it was released in 1992, was released to the Christian market as a Christian release. There's a lot of spiritual overtones. Clayton, now looking back, he said, you know, I don't think it was really ever meant to be a Christian album, and I never really fell in line with that. It was kind of like he took a deal with the label and put his music out. But there's a lot of religious symbolism here. So it was released in 92, then it was released again in 95, 5 as a remaster, kind of like remixed it and added some stuff. And then this is that version that was, you know, included a couple new versions of songs and things like that. So, but back in the day, it was industrial music that was released to the Christian market. There's a 25th anniversary edition that came out, which is remixed up to, you know, to this day standards. And in 94, he released an album by the name Brainchild. It later was put under the moniker of Circle of Dust. It was Brainchild, and then they went ahead and changed the name to Brainchild and made it a Circle of Dust release, because it's still him, but it's him and Doug Mann, the guy from the record label, and not so much the Circle of Dust band, which really was just him and some other musicians for live stuff. But so really we have, on vinyl, we have two true Circle of Dust albums. There are some later material that have not been released on vinyl, and he even did a new album just a handful of years ago under that name, resurrected it. even though he's been doing other stuff under Cell Dweller and now Scandroid and all that. He's done a lot of stuff. Consecrator, one of the early vinyl releases when Rock Records was doing this underground series. This is, you know, they were just getting in, seems like, into the vinyl pressing stuff a handful of years ago, and they were doing these limited underground series, and Consecrator was one of them. More or less, I mean, they had a CD out, but it was more or less, we used to do tape trading and stuff back in the day, and maybe the CD was a later release, maybe they were more of a cassette type release. But anyway, great stuff. Thrash, one of just my favorite bands back in the day of that thrash ilk. It was kind of like, he's got a lower vocal range, it's not hard to decipher, it's not, you know, too extreme, but it was just great stuff. And so it was great to see this 150 released. I have number 20 of 150, and so, and yeah, and it included some extra stuff on here that was not available back in the past, so was thrilled about that one. This is an oldie but a goodie. Be Ready by Contagious. Now Contagious, just a trio of just classic rock, bluesy classic rock of back in the day, and this would have been in the 80s, and so 87. They have another one, Breaking Free, or I've got a guy on the front with chains breaking. That one I haven't found another copy of that on vinyl, but I had it back in the day. But they had 2 albums, as far as I know. That was about it. So yeah, just straight up, you know, classic rock sounding, almost like 70s, early 80s, classic-y rock. Well, let's start with the first one. I guess I'm out of order. Crystavox, California band, I believe. Weren't they California band? Just straight up 80s, that 80s metal feel. Great stuff, you know, melodic vocals. And these were reissued on vinyl a handful of years ago. These are from 90 and 92, I believe. They have 2 albums, Crystavox and the bottom line, Crystavox. This one's just called Crystavox, and this one's called The Bottom Line. Crystavox 2, you know, did they change band members? I can't remember. But these were reissued again on vinyl not too many years ago. So 90s gems that came out on vinyl later. Crushing the Deceiver is a modern band. This is what, 2020 when this came out, I believe. Came out on CD, then it came out on vinyl. I believe this is more of an extreme metal band. I believe they got new stuff coming out, or have they done something real recently? It seems like I'm hearing rumbling. I can't recall now if this is if they're doing something new. This is 2020, so they're due for something. Could have swore, I think. But anyway, one of the more modern bands in the extreme category. And so, yeah, great stuff. And then one of the classics. Now, I'm going to pull this out in the right order. So, the Crucified punk band, hardcore punk band from the 80s, early 90s. They put out a bunch of cassette type stuff. This is their 1987 cassette called Nailed. It was released 25th anniversary vinyl edition. It's been repressed a handful of times in different colors. And then they have a Take Up Your Cross cassette, which I don't think has any kind of vinyl reissue. This is Nailed. And then they had a live album on a cassette, which I don't think has had any kind of vinyl reissue. Then they got signed to a label in 1989 when this came out, I think, just called The Crucified. And on this album, they kind of went, for me, it kind of became much more metallic, borderline thrashy, but yet still, so it's, I guess, hardcore, but with a little more of a leaning towards the metal side. This was really, you know, when I got this compared to the cassettes we had listened to, which were definitely more punky, short songs and everything, this was definitely felt more like a metal album, just with the different lyrical style. So absolutely phenomenal album. Then they came out with The Pillars of Humanity, took it a little step further, became a little, I mean, it's still heavy, but even the vocal approach was a little less punky. They really were moving into what felt like more of a metallic edge, but still maintaining that sound because of the vocals. Great stuff. Yeah, Crucified, one of the best. And that's really it in the C's. We don't got a whole ton, but a lot of great stuff. So anyway, that's it for this one. I will see you when the D's roll around for this series. Rock on and rock hard.